Welcome back to the workshop for another rusty production. Today we're going to be looking at annealing steel. So you saw in a previous video, I went to a trash and treasure market, which is basically just selling odds and ends, and I picked up a whole bunch of these files. And the reason I grabbed the files was to get something that I knew was, I guess, cheap tool steel, because I want to make some knives. I can obviously go and purchase some actual high grade quality steel, but let's say for the start we want to trial a few things and play around with what we can get for nicks. So these are all 50 cents each, so easy to play around with, and I've got no problem with making mistakes with this sort of steel. So the first thing we want to do is we want to take it from a hardened state through to an annealed state to make sure that the metal is going to be easier to work with. But what I wanted to show you was a couple of things along the way. Now, I'm not an expert, I'm an absolute novice, so if you don't agree with the things that I'm doing, please put it in the comments. Don't follow this as gospel. This is an amateur playing around with ideas around blacksmithing to see if they work. So there's a big bastard file that I've got and use quite regularly. And one of the things that I wanted to show you was telling the difference between what has been hardened steel and what is not. So my understanding is that a file, a good quality file that you've got, should bite into steel that has not been hardened. And to prove that, what I'll do is I'll show you a piece of mild steel that I've got here. And I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but maybe you can hear the sound. That is actually biting right into the metal, and if you look there, you can see that it's actually taking the metal away. So it's actually removing metal with this file because this hasn't been hardened. And in fact, being mild steel, it's not going to be something that we can harden, so not ideal for making knives. That being said, here is the steel that we're going to be using to make a knife and a couple of other things. I'm looking to make a touch mark at some point in the near future. Now, I believe this has been hardened, and let's test that. So taking the bastard file again, I'll run it on this area, and you can hear that difference in the sound. It's not biting into the metal, it's literally running over the top of the metal, and you can see there, it's barely giving it a bit of a shine. It's not cutting into the metal like it did with the mild steel. So, what does that mean? That means what we need to do is take it through an annealing process so that I'm not working with hardened steel when I'm actually trying to smith and move the metal into some different shape. So the annealing process is, from my understanding, getting this to a cherry red and letting it then reduce its heat as slow as possible. Now I've got a couple of things that are going to help me do that. Obviously you know and love my brake drum forge, which I made myself. That's what I'm going to be using as the heat source, and using coke and a little bit of charcoal to get it up to the temperature that I want. Now, as you can see, I've been using this for a long time, and there is all sorts of ash and soot that has come off the forge over time. I should probably clean that up at some point. But if we go down here, and hopefully you can see this, this is my little release valve that lets the ash fall out and it collects down the bottom. So what I've been doing over time is collecting some of the ash, which I will show you now. So here's the bucket that I just had. Clearly it's a Star Wars droid bucket, which every man should have in his man cave. And in here we've got basically a whole bunch of ash. Now why do we want the ash? Well, when we've got our files and we get them to the cherry red, I'll not be picking them up by my hands, but I'll be taking them and I'll be putting them into the ash further deep down, as much in there as I can, to actually slow down the heat reduction process. Because if this takes a long time to reduce its heat, it's actually going to allow the molecules to separate a little and be easier to work. So as we go to light the forge, I'll just show you one other thing. Normally I've been following a process of getting the forge lit with a single piece of paper, which actually works. Basically what you do is you scrunch it up so that it becomes a mushroom. So you mushroom it, and ideally you have a little tail to the mushroom which you'll light up with a lighter, and that actually gets going really, really well. But watching one of my other colleagues online, another novice smith, Eviltwinx, I noticed that he did something a little different. So I'm going to try that today and see how it works. So if you watch any of my other videos, you'll see that this is the forge that I normally get going. And normally what I would do is I would put charcoal in the bottom there, and then I put my mushroom piece of paper on top and light it from there. But what I watched Evil do was something a little different. So basically what we do is we lay our paper down like that, get ourselves some charcoal that we put in the middle like so, and then we wrap it up kind of like a ball, like that. Twist it around a few times. And it ends up with the same sort of tail mushroom shape in the end. So things are spilling out a little bit here, but we'll try it in the forge and see how it works. We've got our boil, we've got the forge, we'll light her up. And see whether this charcoal catches the light a little bit more quickly. Turn the fan on. So we've got a fire going really well now. I think that was probably a little bit quicker than it normally is. Certainly got the charcoal hotter faster, which was great. I'll leave a little a thing in the comments, a link in the comments to Evil's channel, and actually the video that I saw that had it in there. And you can check that out when you get the chance. He's always got great videos. And now we're just going to build up the fire a little bit, then we'll get our files in so that we can get them to cherry red to get them annealed. So again, if anyone hasn't been watching the channel, normally what I use is coke that comes in off the side of these wings and actually goes and keeps feeding the fire. And in the center there I use a bit of charcoal, which just keeps it burning away. Now we've got that pretty much going about where we want it. I'll stick the files in and get them heated right up. About as largest file I can put in there unless I do two sides. There's my small one that'll fit in nicely. For anyone who watched that silly hammer video that I did the other day, there's a whole bunch of blue coming off these. Now, I would normally say that was some sort of coating like a chrome or a galvanization, but I'm pretty sure these haven't been galvanized. So if anyone can let me know what they think that blue is, that'd be great, thanks. It's getting really hot on one side, so I'm just gonna flip it over. Alright, so that looks about the right colour. See, that goes all the way along. It was red hot there, it's starting to bend actually. But I'll put that now into the ash and we'll let it cool down at its own speed. We want it the other way. So you can see there's the other file, just about the right colour, just needs a little bit more at the tips, and that'll be ready to put in the ash as well. So clearly this is not the most ideal scenario, and I need a larger bucket to actually handle something like this, but I believe it'll work the way I want, just to soften that metal up. What we need to do is just leave that to cool for as long as possible, and then come back and we can start heating that metal up and reworking it. So we're looking to make a touch mark so we can actually start signing some of our finished items, and with one of these pieces I'm going to be looking, probably the larger one, to be making a blacksmith's knife. So you'll see that on an upcoming video. So that's annealing metal. Interestingly enough, my camera phone, I'm using a little iPhone to do most of this camera work, cut out just before because of the heat inside the shop, which you can see if I bring it over. Isn't too bad there. I measure it from the back wall and we're sitting at about 36 degrees Celsius, which for everybody over in the US is about 96 degrees Fahrenheit. What was interesting the other day, we got up to 47 degrees in Sydney here in Australia, which is basically I think it was 117 degrees Fahrenheit. So we were just above 47 degrees. Now in the shop, it's about 15 degrees hotter than it is outside. So you can imagine that I did not work that day. But I'm looking forward to doing a whole bunch more work very shortly. So that's why I'm preparing. That's why I'm getting the metal annealed. And over the next few days, which will be the next few weeks of videos, I'm looking to get some fun little projects completed and out for you guys to watch. So if you're interested in watching those, please subscribe to the channel, tick the little bell so you get notified when we release a new video. And until then, thank you so much for watching.